Hello and welcome to JRock's Babylon News for August 10th, 2025. And today, to start off with today's show, I am, of course, your host, Jason JRock Houston. And the first thing I want to talk about is it was recently reported in the news. I was recently reading online that John Bush from Armored Saint has announced recently that come December 2025, he's planning to do some select dates as a solo artist. John Bush solo shows, and basically his plan is to celebrate his era of Anthrax, because of course, since he has not been in Anthrax for a number of years, a lot of those John Bush era songs are no longer performed by Anthrax, of course, because Joey Belladonna has, of course, been back in Anthrax for a number of years, and so John Bush wanted to celebrate his era, and he thought, he's questioning whether or not to do it because he says, who knows if this is the right time to do some shows like that. But I think it's as good of a time as any because, again, his era of Anthrax, while it was not the most popular, it was also not the least popular. I mean, probably the two most successful eras of Anthrax would have to be, of course, with Joey Belladonna. He's been the frontman for Anthrax on a lot of the hit albums throughout their career. When people think of Anthrax, a lot of people do think of Joey Belladonna. I know when I first got into Anthrax, I'll never forget seeing the band opening for Kiss in 1987 on the Crazy Nights tour. Saw them open for Kiss, like I said, Long Beach Arena. Great, great show. I mean, at first I remember thinking, Anthrax, they're kind of a thrash band. I don't know about them opening up for Kiss, but of course, it made sense at the time because those guys, like a lot of us, were diehard Kiss fans, and so and that was on the Among the Living tour, probably the band's most successful album up to that time. It probably remains probably the most popular album. So I got to see Anthrax live in 1987, open for Kiss, like I said. Just it was a great show, and equally, I'm glad I got to see Anthrax because probably had they not been opening up for Kiss on that tour, I might not have ever went to see the band play live. I'm glad I did. They did not disappoint. Now, I will say, I also remember in 1992 when Anthrax announced that they had split with Joey Belladonna. And of course, at that time, it was right after they had the big crossover hit with Public Enemy. Bring the Noise, I'm of course talking about. And, they kind of pioneers at that. I will say, though, of course, Aerosmith had a famous kind of hard rock rap crossover, a few years before that, 1986, when they did a remake of course, the classic Aerosmith song "Walk This Way." They got together with Run DMC, and they just had a massive hit with "Walk This Way" all over again. So again, Anthrax was not the first to have a crossover hit like that, but when you think of Anthrax, you think of Scott Ian, you think of Joey Belladonna, you think of Among the Living, you think the fact that they appeared on Married with Children. Bring the Noise is probably one song that a lot of people will mention when they hear the name Anthrax. I mean, even if you're not a diehard Anthrax fan, but maybe you've seen that video back in 1992 all over the MTV back then. They also went on. The song just blew up in such a massive way that it forced Anthrax and Public Enemy to do a tour together, and man, it was massive. And then after that, they fired Joey Belladonna, which I think was really a shock to a lot of the fans. And I remember being shocked to hear that Joey had been fired from Anthrax, but then also kind of wondering, okay, who are they going to get to replace him now? Were they going to go with an unknown? Were they going to go with somebody that was previously known? Well, of course, they chose John Bush, as we all know. And he was previously known from, of course, being the lead singer of Armored Saint. And what's interestingly enough, come to find out that while John Bush would go on to join Anthrax in '92 and replace Joey Belladonna, he'd actually been offered the gig once before in 1984 and turned it down out of his loyalty to his own band, Armored Saint. They were just kind of both bands were kind of getting to go at the same time. And of course, John had high hopes for Armored Saint. And so he got to be part of two very big kind of metal bands in the metal community. Armored Saint, I dare say, while we can consider them metal veterans, metal legends, whatever you want to say, they never had the kind of success that, say, any of the big four bands had. Of course, I'm talking about Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax. And of course, when John Bush joined Anthrax, he became, he was joining one of the big four bands. And so I think that helped a lot with Anthrax. And first of all, they announced Joey was fired. And then it made sense that they would go somebody that was maybe previously known. Like I said, they picked the guy from Armored Saint. So he had a fan base of his own to bring. And so I think that made that transition just a little bit better. And John's kind of wondering if, if this is the right time to do such a, select set of shows like that, to celebrate his era of Anthrax. Well, I think he's the only one that could really do it. I mean, sure enough, Anthrax is not, let's be honest, Joey Belladonna has been back with the band for years. He's not going to want to do a tour with Anthrax celebrating the John Bush era, and he's not going to want to even probably invite John Bush up on stage to celebrate some of the John Bush era songs. I just don't see that happening. John Bush is the guy to do this, and he is the voice for those songs, so it makes sense that he does it. I wish John Bush nothing but luck with this. So let's see what happens. He's planning to do it in December. Now, here's a question for you guys. Anybody out there want to go see these John Bush shows? Were you a fan of Anthrax? The John Bush era. As far as being an Anthrax fan, me personally, I like it all. I like John Bush. I like Joey Belladonna. And then even when Joey came back to Anthrax, John Bush, rather than say, "Hey, I'm gonna go and have a John Bush solo career," he went back to Armored Saint. Armored Saint reunited, and so for it was as far as those Anthrax fans and John Bush fans, when he split with Anthrax, or they welcomed Joey Belladonna back to the band, shall we say? We got an Armored Saint reunion, so why not do it, John? I think it would be interesting. Of course, July 22nd will be a date that people will be talking about, in regards to metal music for years. And of course, I'm talking about the day metal legend, the Prince of Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne, passed from this world, passed away. Now, I remember sitting in my living room that day and it coming on the news. And I mean, they did more than just say, rock legend Ozzy Osbourne died today from complications of Parkinson's disease. No, one station I was watching, man, they spent a whole 45 minutes talking about it, when it first happened. And then they would have news briefs about Ozzy Osbourne all throughout the day. I'd never seen anything like it. So I was pretty amazed at the way people responded to Ozzy death, and just everybody came out. You heard all these kind of tributes. Former Megadeth bassist David Ellefson, I heard a comment he made, and he hit it right on the nail, which is, of course, there's a fact that Ozzy was English himself. He came from Birmingham, England. We all know that. And I bring this up because David Ellefson said, there never, not since Queen Elizabeth's death a few years ago, had so many people come out to England to celebrate and honor somebody. And I think Ozzy would have been probably shocked at all the people that came out to pay tribute and honor him, the day of his memorial service. And I think Elson hit it right on the nail. I mean, I think to equivalent the passing of Ozzy Osbourne to Queen Elizabeth's death, I think it's right on. It's right there. And while people hear about it, and they may laugh a little. It's just so true. But again, Ozzy will be talking about for years. A lot of people, of course, first got to know him as a singer in Black Sabbath, and of course, his successful solo career. Then, I don't know about you, but I love Sabbath. I love Ozzy. I just love it all, and so that's all I got to say about as far as the music. But Ozzy was such a legend, and it's interesting. People have been writing articles about it. One thing I was reading online just the other day. In fact, I believe in giving credit where credit is due, and so I read an editorial on the Metal Injection website, and I believe the editor-in-chief's name was Greg Keneally, and Greg was writing about that. They haven't had an Ozzfest in several years. I think the last official Ozzfest took place in 1997, and doing my research for today's show, what I was able to find out, oddly enough, is at the time of the final Ozzfest festival in 1997, the ticket sales for the Ozzfest had gone down, the popularity of the festival, because just changing climate and music and stuff like that at the time, ticket sales were so bad that they just decided to give away tickets for people to go see Ozzfest. But the editor-in-chief, Greg Keneally at Metal Injection, he wrote an editorial, and I just loved his idea, saying, I think what they should do in regards to Ozzfest, it would be cool to bring the Ozzfest back, make it an annual event, in the spirit of Ozzfest. Obviously, in the past, every Ozzfest featured Ozzy Osbourne, either with a solo band or fronting Sabbath. Now, of course, that is no longer going to be possible. But as Greg pointed out, it would be a great thing to kind of relaunch Ozzfest as an annual festival every year in Ozzy's honor, and use it more as a vehicle to highlight great up-and-coming bands, maybe some classic metal artists who previously appeared at our Ozzfest. So I just love Greg's idea, and I want to know what you all think, because I think, again, just what a super idea that would be. And I think if they were to even do this, say a year from now, next summer of 2026, I think being that it'll be about 1 year since Ozzy had passed, be a great way to honor the man. And I think since they haven't had an Ozzfest since 1997, that now is the time to do something like that. I think people would go and check it out, because when you haven't had something like, let's say, the Ozzfest, even take place since 1997, if they were all of a sudden to relaunch something like that, can you imagine? Can you imagine the people that would come out? Can you imagine the fans? I think even though Ozzy would no longer be able to be part of it, it was done in his honor and in that spirit. I think the fans and all these bands would come out to help relaunch Ozzfest in his honor, in his memory. And I dare say that it would probably be bigger, badder than ever before. So wouldn't it be great, Ozzy fans, if we could make this happen? I mean, I want to hear what you all think. I love this idea. That's all I can say about that. Now, of course, another big story in the news recently is one of my, I guess I could say, my past radio heroes. And of course, I'm talking about Howard Stern. Now, back in the day, I got to be honest, I haven't listened to Howard Stern in probably over 20 years. Reason being, like a lot of people, I used to listen to Howard Stern on my way to work, in the car. when he was on the old terrestrial radio. Okay, and you know, it was free, and you got it for free. Now, back in the day when I started listening to Howard Stern, he called himself the king of all media. He did and said a lot of controversial things. Let's be honest, a lot of us tuned in to Howard Stern back in the day just to see what crazy antics he was going to pull on his radio show. You just never knew what he was going to do or say. And with the success of a radio show, of course, came other things that he was able to be successful. With the success of a radio show, he of course launched a TV show, and I gotta give Howard Stern credit for what he once was. He truly was the king of all media. I mean, again, started out doing a radio show, very controversial. NBC Radio, they fired him because he got so controversial, so out of hand. But the more controversial, the more outlandish he got, the more popular he got. And I got to say, I tuned in back in the day. It was great, rip roaring comedy. It was funny. Back in the day, he didn't take himself too serious. And again, like I said, the success of a radio show launched a TV show. A show that was that they basically and again, this was before they had Zoom. This was for YouTube. This was before reality TV. He had the brains to say, hey, you know what, somebody? We should have cameras brought in the radio station and have somebody film what goes on as we're doing our show. And it just became, this is, everybody does that now, but he was really the first. And so that's why when he branded himself the king of all media, it really made sense. From radio to TV, he eventually wrote an autobiography, Private Parts, and he had this dream then of making it into a movie. Mission accomplished. The movie was funnier than the book. If you were a Howard Stern fan back then, like me, you went out and bought the book. You saw the movie. You were laughing in the movie theater. Just it was a fun time to be a Howard Stern fan back then. And then, of course, about 20 years ago, he announced that he was leaving, leaving our radio airways. And he was one of the first people to actually be signed to Sirius, I believe it was Sirius FM, satellite radio. And he's been there for about the last 24 years. But of course, the last 2 weeks, the big talk has been Howard Stern is being canceled. And I got to say, like I said, I haven't listened to Howard Stern at all. Last time I heard him on the radio, I got to say, was about 24 years ago. He was making this big announcement. And part of the reason I haven't heard him is obviously I don't have satellite radio. I never felt the need to subscribe to it. I get by, entertain myself, listening to other things. But also, last about 24 years ago when he made this big jump, all of a sudden Howard Stern he changed his ways. All of a sudden he instead of wanting to be the free speech guy and fighting for censorship, all of a sudden he wanted to become one of the elites. He wanted to become he wanted to be accepted by the Hollywood crowd, if you will. I think the biggest mistake Howard Stern ever made was going woke, getting a little too political. Now, everybody has a right to their views when it comes to politics, and that goes for Howard Stern too. But I think where Howard made the mistake, like a lot of people, he got into caring what other people thought. He, instead of being authentic and being that guy that was fighting for everybody's right for free speech, all of a sudden he wanted to censor. He wanted to start censoring other people that when they were saying stuff that he didn't like. He became the very antithesis of what he originally was. That's why a lot of original Howard Stern fans, like myself, turned on Howard Stern. Um, all of a sudden, he wanted to just be accepted by the Hollywood elite. He cared what other people started thinking. And here's the thing. Now, for the last several years, I guess you could say at least 8 to 10 years, he's been like trash, like a lot of people trashing Donald Trump and a lot of other people. And here's the thing. Maybe Howard Stern, had a sudden change of heart. I don't know, but like he used to invite Donald Trump on his radio show back in the day when he was that controversial guy. They 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 told stories together. They laughed. Now that is just one aspect of it. But a lot of people will agree that Howard Stern. I mean, he may pretend to be ashamed of some of the stuff he's done in the past, but let's be honest here, okay? He like a lot of people, like he only wants to have certain people on as his guests. He does not. He used to be the king of inviting people on and insulting them, but like I remember, for example, he had Dana Plato, who sadly um, committed suicide. She came on a number of years ago, and she was struggling with her drug addiction, and he was trying to embarrass her, trying to get her to take a drug test on the radio show. It didn't go so well for her. She struggled during the appearance. I mean, but so the new and improved Howard Stern, as I'm saying, that might be something he wants to try to forget, or the fact that Howard Stern, he talks a lot of his shows become more about politics and his views of politics than about entertaining the audience like he used to. And I bring that up because another thing Howard Stern would probably love to bury is the fact that there's that infamous incident where he got dressed up in blackface. Now, I know at the time, people laughed. They thought it was funny. He laughed at it and he thought it was funny. Now, that's something he may want to try to forget about or erase, pretend like it never happened, but it happened. And that was more authentic than Howard Stern, trashing half, telling people, hey, if you do not view things politically as I do, I don't want you listening to my show. So again, insulting half the audience, insulting half the crowd. And with me, it's not so much about his political views. It's more about, I believe in the beginning, Howard Stern was more authentic. He didn't care what other people thought. And that's why people were tuning in. People were tuning in. He called himself a shock jock. One of the first people to ever use that terminology. But Howard Stern went from being on the radio like 5 days a week, from what I understand, to like getting paid this ridiculous amount of radio by satellite radio. He only do like 3 shows a week. And they've just decided, well, his ratings continue to go down. People are not tuning in like they used to. And they've come to realize that maybe they could pay somebody else that ridiculous amount of money to do a show 5 days a week. Howard Stern's saying that it's not necessarily that he's being canceled, that he may decide to walk away from the deal because his deal is about ready to expire. And here's the thing, he's saying he's not going to accept the deal that they're offering him because he thinks he deserves at least what he's been getting, or if not more money. So the talk is they may go at least by his catalog of shows. They want to be able to play those past shows, and he may accept that. But he's making it seem like he's the one walking away. We'll see. I miss the old Howard Stern. I wish he would go back to being that classic Howard Stern, but people change. That's his right to do that. But again, there's consequences to pay for that. And so we'll see what happens to Howard Stern, but I think he's made enough money at this point in life that he has 2 choices here. He can either find a home somewhere else, continue to do things as he's been doing, but that would be kind of crazy because when you get canceled like this, it's for a reason. So you do one of two things: you either retire and go away and live off the millions of money you made at this point in life, or you try to pick up the pieces, maybe learn from your mistakes, do something new. In any event, I wish Howard Stern all the luck in the world. Like I said, I was a fan back in the day, so when I think of Howard Stern, I try to think about the old Howard Stern. Howard Stern used to make me laugh. But again, Howard Stern was at one time the true king of all media, and you can't deny that. And that is JRock's Babylon News for August 10th, 2025. We'll be seeing you all again real soon. Take care for now. Bye, everybody. See you soon.